It is no doubt that the Nigerian economy has undergone some significant recessionary challenges. Where the financial services sector is concerned, historically, low oil prices, currency depreciation, and economic contraction experienced in 2016 continue to generate new non-performing loans in 2017. My name is Peace Hyde, and this is My Worst Day on Forbes Africa TV. Despite the positive financial results for 2016 posted by Nigerian banks, notwithstanding the turbulent operating conditions, experts believe that significant financial risks persist beyond the reported figures. However, for one man, the challenges present the right set of conditions to position his bank as a leader in the Nigerian financial sector. Let's take a look at who he is. Born August 15, 1966, Herbert Wigwe is a Nigerian banker and entrepreneur. He is currently the CEO and Group Managing Director of Access Bank PLC, one of Nigeria's top 5 banking institutions. Wigwe has a degree in accountancy from the University of Nigeria, an MA in Banking and Finance from the University College of North Wales, an MSc in Financial Economics from the University of London, and is an alumni of Harvard Business School Executive Management Program. Wigwe began his career at Coopers & Lybrand, Lagos, as a management consultant, later qualifying as a chartered accountant. After a stint at Capital Bank, he joined GT Bank, where he spent over a decade working in corporate and institutional banking, rising to become the executive director in charge of the institutional banking. In 2002, Wigwe and his business partner saw a unique opportunity and grasped it, acquiring what was then a small commercial bank, Access Bank. At the time, was the 65th largest of the 89 banks in the country. Access Bank is now one of the top 5 banks in Nigeria and ranked among the top 500 global banks according to 2015 report by The Banker magazine, and is aiming to be Africa's top bank. As one of Nigeria's foremost corporate bankers, he has helped develop some of Africa's biggest companies in the construction, telecommunications, energy and oil and gas sectors through a unique model which involves understanding and providing financial support and expertise. Wigwe is a board member of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company and a member of the advisory board for Friends Africa. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, a fellow of the Institute of Credit Administration, and an honorary member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Hello and welcome to My Worst Day, and joining me, this man needs no introduction. He is one of the men behind one of the most successful financial institutions in Nigeria, Dr. Herbert Wigwe. Thank you very much for joining us on My Worst Day.
Thank you very much, Peace.
Now, let me dive straight in. We need to unravel who is the man behind this illustrious profile. Who is Herbert Wigwe? Herbert Wigwe
is a very simple man. I went to school in the northernmost part of the country, Federal Government College Sokoto, and then of course I finished in the south at Federal Government College Warri. I'm born by clergy parents. Both my parents are pastors. I'm one of 5 surviving children of my parents. I have several children, and I'm talking about both biological children, my siblings' children, and just because I love lots of children, and that's why I'm referring to it in the manner in which I'm doing. I'm very passionate about my country. I believe that it offers greater opportunities than anywhere else in the world. Most people will say the same thing about their countries, but if you look at Nigeria and look at the gross potentials that we have, I think that there is so much all of us can do for the betterment of ourselves and generations to come.
Well, I think that looking at the trajectory of your career, it's quite clear that Nigeria has a lot of opportunities and you've been able to capitalize on each and every single one with so many high moments in your career from the early days. What was it like for you starting out as an entrepreneur?
Interesting. I'd had the experience a couple of times. I'd had the opportunity of working in a bank that didn't go well very early in my career, having trained as a chartered accountant. I also had the opportunity of working yet again in another entrepreneurial endeavor where we basically started a bank from a plain balance sheet and grew it into what was one of Nigeria's corporate success stories. And so coming into Access, which is where I work right now, it was nothing new. The only difference was that we were at the forefront of everything. And so we were at the firing line of all the pressures and the pains that come from entrepreneurship. We put our own capital at risk. And so it was a totally different experience. It's different when you're doing it under somebody else's umbrella, if you like. Okay, so that is more entrepreneurship. Okay, but when you are truly on the firing line, everything is up for grabs. You can lose everything in 1 second.
You speak about, starting off a bank with your own capital. Talk to me a little bit about the journey to actually acquiring Access Bank and then developing it to what it was. I remember a conversation with Mr. Ike Mokade, and he actually said that he approached you with the unbelievable idea of starting a bank. And the reason why he approached you is you were one of his most trusted and reliable friends. Before you jumped at the opportunity, what was going through your mind? What made you think that you were actually able to venture into this? And how has the journey been so far?
Our confidence was built from the fact that we had done it before. Where we first started, or where I first started as a banker, was also an entrepreneurial environment. Getting into the bank we worked in before we worked in Access, which was GT, it was also an interesting and very successful entrepreneurial endeavor. And so coming to Access was, in my mind, no big deal. Now, it is interesting because my partner or brother and I share so much in common. And his aspiration was an exact mirror of what I really wanted to do for myself. So when the idea came up, it didn't take 1 second for us to say, look, let's do it and let's go for it. Now, it's also true that, even if I have to say it myself, that we're competent, that we have built the skills. We understood what it meant to run an institution, or put differently, how not to run a bank as well. Okay, so it was clear to us. Now, we also knew that we would learn a couple of things as we moved on in time. We didn't have all the skills. There is no such person. But we felt that we also had very strong people management skills where we could bring out the best of people who also had complementary skills, all right, to take us on this endeavor. Remember that it's never one person's effort. Yeah. It's the effort of a group of people. It's the effort of a strong team. It's also God's blessings, because you will meet several landmines along the route, landmines that you don't even know how to navigate. So yes, we both came in, but there was also a strong team that we brought in. Now, they may not have seen those people, they may not have been the faces behind the scenes, but these guys were also intrapreneurs and also spurred us, if you like, and challenged our process, our thought process day in, day out, all right? What they didn't know was each time that happened, it got us stronger and made us more confident to do what we're doing.
All right. How old were you when you actually joined this endeavor with Ike Mokade?
How old were we? We were what, 36?
Right.
Yes, that was it.
So how did people respond?
35.
35. So how did people respond to two quite young men with very big dreams? What was the reaction that you got from people?
In fairness, as I look back in time, there were people who thought, how are these guys going to pull it together? There were people who thought, young people don't work together very well. They're likely to quarrel. Several people thought like that. Some people just said, just wait, it's just a matter of time. Something would happen. In fact, there were some consulting firms that said they were not going to take on our mandate because they felt these guys are just a bit too young for what they want to do. So that was the kind of vibe that we're beginning to get. But within us, we didn't see ourselves as being young, because there were people who had done it at that age, perhaps with much smaller businesses or much smaller banks at the time they started, all right? But we felt we were so much better trained than most other people who had done it before. So we're infinitely confident in our capacity to do what we're doing. So yes, age was a number, but if you looked at our track and what we had done up until that time, we're not 35.
Right, and what was the experience like taking it from a very, very humble beginning to become one of Nigeria's largest financial institutions? What has that journey been like overall?
I think it's been great. There's also been very, very trying times. Very trying times. There's been days where we've had to roll on the floor and pray and just beg God that certain things shouldn't happen. When there's been big changes in the macro, there's been more days of celebration with each passing thing, each success makes us so much more confident. Okay, so it's been mixed feelings. But in the whole, I think it's so much thanksgiving to God and pride.
When you look at your journey, everyone usually has a point in their life or in their entrepreneurial journey where they thought they were going to lose it all, or it wasn't going to work, or they've hit a huge roadblock. I have to ask you, what has been your worst day in business so far?
It was a very interesting day, and my partner and I sat back and we had a couple of people come over and share with us the fact that something was going to hit the news the next morning. Mm-hmm. And we're getting very concerned, very, very concerned, because we knew that perhaps there was some miscommunication, and that if our regulators were now fully aware of this event that was unfolding, it could lead to a complete destruction in our careers.
You said something's going to hit the news. What is the thing that was going to hit it?
There was some information about an exposure which we had, and I'm talking of a financial commitment which we had somewhere. And the communication was that it was not a performing loan, and it was not true. It was actually performing.
Right.
But because of the size of the loan, it could have triggered an issue. Mm-hmm. So having been that concerned, and we said, look, we need to share with the media or find out from them what is happening and all of that. But remember, we're a much smaller institution, and our reputation, particularly in banking, could affect the overall franchise. It would affect our stakeholders, i.e. our shareholders. It was going to affect our customers. Most importantly, it was going to affect our people, because they were going to be concerned as to our professional future. Mm-hmm. We're opening a subsidiary in Ghana at the time, and we had just gotten all the approvals, and opening that subsidiary was the president of Ghana. Obviously, the central bank governor of Ghana was also going to be present. So I was rushing to make that trip, because obviously he couldn't disappoint the president, who had basically obliged to come and open the bank for us. We got on the airplane, and I was under the most severe pain, and I knew it was coming from the pressure. And this was deep pain in my guts, and it was the beginning of a symptom of something else, which I was going to have to solve later on in life. I was wriggling in that plane. Halfway through, we're trying to make up our minds if we should come back to Lagos. I've never been that vulnerable in my life. We've worked 8 to 2 a.m. for several days, all my life. We landed in Ghana, and there was an ambulance that came to meet me on the tarmac. I had my shirts taken off. I didn't know when all of this was happening. I guess one of the things I was happy that didn't happen was that none of my people was there at the airport, apart from the protocol person.
Did you think that was going to be the end of you?
I was concerned. They asked to take me to a hospital. Because I started having that symptom a bit earlier, I thought I was going to go past it. And after about 3 hours, it subsided. But I was kept under intensive care. Much later in the day, I continued the conversation with my partner, asking him what had happened. And he said he was not sure, but it would appear that the news was still going to make it in the morning. And so we're busy talking to our friends who were in media up until midnight. And then he said it was truly going to make it in the morning. We spoke for about 2 hours, and he told me he was going to go back to sleep. He had to try and get some rest since this battle was going to go on in the morning. I've never felt, I had to ask him a very stupid question. I said, look, how are you going to sleep? We just need to keep talking until morning because there's nothing that can happen.
Right.
He said he had to try and go to bed, that we had to just try and manage. And I said, look, how are you going to sleep? How is that going to happen? I stayed awake until the early hours of the morning. I managed the reception for our bank in Ghana. But right after the president left, I actually did not take my luggage. I didn't pick anything. I walked straight to the airport just to show you my state of mind. I had no appreciation of time. I had lost all I was thinking. I was totally engulfed in that process. And I made it back home. I asked my partner when I got back, I said, I've not slept for 48 hours. What happened? How did you do it? And he told me he had never done this before, that he had to clutch his Bible to his chest, and that was the only way he could get some succor to get some sleep. But that was just the beginning. As this situation went on for a couple of days, and we started asking ourselves, how do you truly manage this situation? How do you communicate with the public? What type of legal advice do we take? We went to seek legal advice as to how to manage the situation. And you know, because we're financially astute people and all of that, lawyers told us and described the setting to us, and we understood very sharply what it meant. And this was not in the country.
What did the lawyers say to you?
Well, what he said was that if we didn't manage this situation delicately, it could create a very, very significant exposure to us, far beyond the financial exposure that we knew.
So complete bankruptcy?
It could get there.
Did you believe that you'd become bankrupt?
I felt we had the stealth, the energy, the capacity to go through it. But it's a very, very difficult statement when you hear. We must have walked about 3 or 4 kilometers in winter without a jacket, and it meant nothing to us. But it was the beginning of several sleepless nights, because you had to sell everything you had, to everything completely, to basically go past all of that. Those were the nature of experiences that we had that changed us and made a difference to us.
So you literally had to dissolve all of your assets. You
Yes.
both had nothing left.
Completely.
How long did this process take for you to actually?
So because we had to prove this point, and we had to maintain our reputation, it was something that took literally 10 days, start to finish. So it was a fire sale, and we had to do everything that we had to do. But even after doing that, the rest of mind that came on the day that we finished all of it, in spite of the fact that you had lost everything you ever created, was a totally different experience.
In light of everything that you've managed to overcome, what is your view on failure now?
I'm absolutely petrified of failure.
Right.
And would do everything possibly not to find myself in certain circumstances. You know, people ask us why we spend so much time working. Apart from the fact that we truly enjoy what we're doing. So I don't know anything about work-life balance. I'm always in balance because I enjoy every second of what I do. But the thought of failure is something that I don't even want to dream of. And so we're perpetually seeking ways to better ourselves, to better prepare ourselves for those difficult moments in life and all of that. So that is what it has done. It has done for us. And we like to share it with our people, because the only way to ever continue to sustain a business over time is for you to always be in day one mode, assuming that something can go wrong. All right, and how do I continue to make sure I lift this enterprise to the very next level, to make sure that whatever shocks come up, 1 year after, I'm still on day one mode, reinventing and coming up with new innovations to take me ahead.
I mean, from that experience, you've grown in leaps and bounds. You really are dominating now the finance space in terms of Nigeria and I'd say West Africa. Did you ever think this day would come?
For us, what we're seeking to do is it's not just a Nigeria or West African dream. It's not just an African dream as well. We're creating a global enterprise.
Right.
We're creating an enterprise that everybody would see and be proud of Africans, and let people know that Africans can truly create institutions that will stand alongside world-class enterprises. Our people are just as good. We went to the best schools like everybody else in the world. So why can't we perform at the same level? Why can't we develop our country, all right, to the point where people look at it and compare us with other Western countries? There are a few Nigerians that are doing great things, and we remain ever so proud of them, and we learn from them. The Dangote institution is an institution that we've been associated with forever. Okay, why can't we do the same thing in banking? All right, so it's not just about Nigeria, it's not just about West Africa. We've gone beyond West Africa. Right. It's not just the continent, but where you find us in London, where you find us in Dubai, where you find us anywhere else in the world, as you see more and more and more, all right, you will see a world-class institution. That is what we're pushing. I think we're not there yet, but we will get there.
Now, I noticed that you spoke about your plans for Access and the brand. But what is next for Herbert Wigwe? You mentioned Aliko Dangote. Do you have your eyes set on the richest man in Africa at point?
No. But what I know, though, is that for everything you do in life, if you do it well, you will do well. I'm determined to make sure that the team that I work with, all right, truly create the best brand. I'm determined to ensure that the African phenomenon of saying 20 years after, 30 years after, where is that institution? We want to disprove it. It can happen. All right, we have seen institutions in the Western world that have stayed far beyond those who founded those institutions. Some of them have lasted 100 years. We will do the same thing. There is no institution that was our size, by the way, all right, 17 years ago, that is existing today. All right, and so that in itself gives us great pride. But for us, what is going to happen in the next 20 years, or perhaps the next 50 years? Let us create generations and generations of leaders coming out of Access in whatever they choose to do. I mean, they will never always be here, but wherever they are as Access ambassadors doing whatever they're doing, people will always be able to know that these guys worked in a true institution that has made them the leaders that they are.
What advice would you give to young people looking to follow your steps in business?
First of all, I think a couple of things are very important. You must be extremely confident in what you're doing. You must know what you're doing. You must stick to areas of your competence, okay? You don't just jump into something because somebody else is doing it. If your calling or your competence is in media, focus on media. If it's in banking, focus on banking, etc. Don't just do things because other people are doing it. Where your calling is, where your competence is, that is where you should do it. But fear and believe in God is important. Because you know there are little things in those very moments of despair that will give you comfort. And I think fear of God and respect for God and religion is critical at those moments.
Thank you very much for sharing that inspirational piece of advice with us, Mr. Wigwe. It's been absolutely amazing having you on My Worst Day.
Thank you very much, Peace, for this conversation, and I truly enjoyed sharing with you. Thank you.
Well, you've heard from the man himself about his worst day in business, but let's take a look at what his closest allies had to say.
My name is Nixon, and I head the large conglomerates group. I've been fortunate to have worked with Herbert over the last 15 years minimum.
My name is Roosevelt Obona. I'm the Group Deputy Managing Director of Access Bank. I've had the privilege and, in some sense, misfortune to have worked with Herbert for pretty much all my life, the last 20 years.
But I must say that my last 15 years has been very eventful because of the fact that I was able to have a direct working relationship with Herbert. So that could actually tell me what kind of person Herbert is.
Herbert is an extremely passionate person and someone who believes in the strength of the human person.
Success for Herbert, it's not a win-lose relationship. So success for Herbert is the fact that given a responsibility, right? What value am I bringing, not just to my immediate colleagues, but what kind of responsibility am I bringing to the entire world if the opportunity does arise?
I've seen Herbert grow, even though he was my boss, but I always watched him from a distance. He's the kind of person who never says no to anything and is willing to push himself to achieve it.
It is often said that people learn business skills by experience rather than in the classroom. The value of real-life learning and practical theories of business, which people develop from finding out what works for them, is invaluable. And when their worst day comes, they invariably lean on that wisdom to pull them through. But the question is, how will you cope with your worst day? My name is Peace Hyde, and this is My Worst Day, on Forbes Africa TV.